Oh wow, Jacob, that new shirt sure is nice. Oh, thanks guys, I appreciate it. Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a like on this video. I'm trying to hit 100k subscribers on this channel by the end of the playoffs, so your subscription would be much appreciated. Also drop a like, it only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. Today is a post-game recap going over the Heat versus Sixers game and the Mavericks versus Suns game that happened last night. Didn't really have the energy to record it at that time, so I woke up in the afternoon because I'm a degenerate, and now I'm recording this post-game recap. So a little bit later than usual, but it is what it is. So the first game I want to go over is the Heat versus Sixers game, as it was the least interesting between the two. Mavericks Suns was really interesting for a large chunk of the game up until a huge run from the Suns, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. But this game from the Heat and the Sixers was kind of ish a repeat of the first game. I'd say the Sixers played like 5% better. I don't remember what the actual score differential was in game one, but it felt like the Sixers played a little bit better. James Harden was kind of the same again. Tobias Harris was probably a little bit worse in this game, and then Tyrese Maxey, he had a 34-point game in this one, and he was phenomenal. Probably the best player on the floor in that game. But yeah, it was another game where it was just like the Sixers without Joel Embiid, they don't have enough versus this Heat team. And we kind of already knew that already, and this is just reinforcing it. I don't know that there's that much to say. There was a lot of discourse about James Harden. Personally, I've just come to accept that James Harden isn't what he used to be, and the player that he is now is still quite good. It would be nice if he was a little bit more aggressive, but I also wonder if maybe he just simply can't handle being that aggressive, and that's why he doesn't do it. So I'm not going to harp too much on that discourse that I saw. I don't think it's really that big of a deal. There's been people talking about whether or not he should get a max contract. Yes, he is still a max contract level player, or at the very least. Now, I guess it depends because he's so much older, it might be like 50 million. I think that'd be a little steep. But, you know, like 35 a year sounds like the right ballpark for him. On the Heat side of things, there really wasn't too much worthy of note. I think Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo both had a good game. And the standout, of course, is Victor Oladipo, who had 19 points off of the bench. I believe he went like 3 for 6 from outside, something like that. Had a lot of good defensive plays on James Harden, one of which led to him getting a layup in transition. And it was just really nice to see him have a good performance. He's been actually getting real minutes for them in the playoffs thus far. And he's not been doing bad, but it's just been like, I don't know, he just kind of exists. And he's still a good enough player that he's not detrimental. But it's very clear that they're putting him out there in the hopes that, like, the player that he used to be, he's going to start flashing that again. And he hasn't really done that until today. Of course, he did have that like 40-point game at the end of the season, so that could have been a sign of, you know, what he could potentially be capable of. I don't think it's fully out of the cards that just enough time consecutively being healthy can lead to him being a good player again. But like, seriously, if Victor Oladipo is going to produce at anywhere near this level in the playoffs again, if he was even like a 15-point per game scorer for them off of the bench with him being a really good defensive player and a capable playmaker, that would be absolutely huge for them and would really be the leg up that they need to make up for some of the talent difference that some other teams might have. But other than that, Heat played a good game. I believe they had a bigger lead, and then the Sixers made somewhat of a run in the third or fourth quarter to get it closer than it should have been, but it felt like the Heat had this one the whole way through. Another game that felt like the team that won had it the whole way through was the Suns versus Mavericks game, but in a different way, because this was a 1 or 2 possession game for really up until the fourth quarter, or maybe it was like late third quarter when the Suns went on their run. I believe it was the fourth quarter, though. I might be mixing it up in my head. But the whole game, even though the Suns were consistently down by like up to like 4-6 points or so, it never really felt like they weren't going to win, because for the Mavericks, again, for the first 3 quarters, it felt like they were playing about as good as they could. Now, both Spencer Dinwiddie and Jalen Brunson did not have themselves good games, so I understand why that would maybe make you scratch your head at the notion that the team was playing well. And of course, they could have played better, and it's not as though the Mavericks were easily the best version of themselves. But Luka was phenomenal. He was cooking. And Reggie Bullock was really big in this game. Hit a lot of threes. I remember in the third quarter he hit 2 threes back-to-back when it looked like the Suns were going to pull away, and those threes were huge. And it just felt like the team was playing pretty good, and the Suns were playing Now, if you actually did the box score, the Suns were shooting like 60% from the field and like 50% from 3. So they actually were playing pretty fucking good, but it just felt like, I don't know how to describe it other than like the vibes were there for the Mavericks and they weren't for the Suns. It felt like the Suns were just playing okay and the Mavericks were fighting their ass off. And really, the difference there is one team working their ass off and the other team just kind of casually playing, and they're neck and neck. That means that it's just a matter of time until the team that's just casually playing is going to stop them, because then they can go in the fourth quarter like the Phoenix Suns did, target Luka Doncic over and over, and go on like a 20-point run in the matter of like 4 minutes. So that's exactly what happened. The game that was close for 3 quarters suddenly became a blowout. And yeah, that it was a sign to me that the Mavericks really have very little chance in this series. The fact that the Suns seem to be playing with their food and they're like, all right, let's be serious and win the game now. Like, they just flipped that switch. And like the fact that, again, it was not the best version of the Mavericks, but I think a good version of the team versus the Suns just not really even putting in that much effort. DeAndre Ayton only played 18 minutes because of foul trouble. For them to have accomplished what they did, for them to be in the game like that with that difference in effort level, it's like, okay, this team can casually be better than this team trying its hardest. So that makes it very, very evident which team is better, and the Phoenix Suns are definitely going to walk away with the W in this series. Obviously, they won the first 2 games on their home floor, but like, I'm questioning whether we'll even get a win from the Mavericks. If we do, it's going to be a matter of Luka Doncic just having a nuclear performance, which he's very capable of doing. So definitely not writing off the possibility that they win 1, maybe even 2 games if he has 2 nuclear games. But in general, the Suns are just very clearly the better team, and that's what's going to matter in the end. I do want to talk about some of the discourse around Luka Doncic's defense, because as I mentioned, they were really targeting him in that fourth quarter. I think this was less to do with Luka's defensive capability and more to do with his stamina, because the guy was just burnt out by the fourth quarter, and for him to have to do what he has to do offensively, to have that burden and then to be as exhausted as he was, obviously he's not going to put 110% effort on the defensive side. And this is something I've talked about before with Luka Doncic. And, you know, I would blame it a bit on his conditioning, which some people do, but like, to have the offensive responsibility that Luka does, being out of shape after playing, or being out of breath rather, at that time in the game and being really fucking exhausted makes sense. The guy is just simply asked to do too much for him to not be gassed. And the Suns were very much aware of that and very much took advantage of it. Luka this year has been a pretty good defensive player. I'm not going to say he's like great, even though I do think there is room for him to eventually be that. But he doesn't have to carry quite as much in the regular season. The stakes are not as high. He doesn't have to play as many minutes. In this case, Jalen Brunson, like I mentioned, he had a bad game and he's been leaning on him, at least in the Jazz series, and hasn't been able to do that. In this one, I think it was more to do with Luka being tired than him just not being capable defensively. I don't think he had the effort to put in on the defensive side of the floor at the point in the game where the Phoenix Suns decided to start attacking him. He got worn down from having to do as much as he did, and then Phoenix saw blood in the water, and they went for it. Or smelled blood in the water, whatever the metaphor is. So yeah, I don't think, and also Luka had like a 39-9 game and was the only reason they were in the game at any point to begin with. So I don't understand criticizing him really. But that's the way NBA fans are. They're always going to pick apart every little small thing. Not that this wasn't a small thing, because it's basically the reason why the Suns blew the game wide open. But really, I just think that's a matter of the roster construction, the offensive responsibility of Luka Doncic. A way to mitigate that would be Jalen Brunson or Spencer Dinwiddie having good games, but neither of them did. And I've seen people suggest, I think I saw Nikias Duncan on Twitter suggest that like the first quarter should be like the Jalen Brunson show, and then let Luka gradually work into doing more and more and more stuff until he's basically doing everything, but then not really wasting any energy in the first quarter. He's able to save that energy for the first quarter. That makes sense to me. I remember there was the Clippers series last year where Luka, like if you looked at his points splits between each quarter, his first quarter he averaged like 17 points per game on like crazy efficiency, and then it would be like 14, 10, and then like 6, and then the efficiency would also dwindle. Like as the game progressed, you could see the way that his stamina going down would affect how well he played. So yeah, it's really a matter of that for the way his defense was, and really the fact that in most games that we see from Luka Doncic, he starts off the game gunning and he gradually slows down. But yeah, that's my thoughts on those games. I think both of these series are probably over unless Joel Embiid plans on making an early return. But yeah, that is it. Goodbye.